It's very much a wow feeling every time you get it behind the wheel. My grandparents had pictures of the truck. They had the plaques and trophies all over. It was just neat to look at the memories and see the pictures of it. I always told them, we're gonna get that truck back someday. My grandpa was a body man at Lahan Body Shop in South Sioux City. The truck was their parts runner truck. The truck just grew on him. He was born in 1941 and the truck was built in 41, originally from the factory. It got chopped 4 inches by the original owner of the body shop, and they didn't drive it very much after that. It sat outside for a while. Eventually a tree grew through the frame, right where the box is supposed to be. And when he bought it in 1962, they had to chop the tree down just so they could get the truck out of the lot. He restored the truck. He made it a driver, painted it maroon, just made it that he could take the family out for ice cream. They started hitting a few car shows locally just to have fun with it. They did hot rodding a lot when they were younger, and probably about mid-60s they decided to get into stock car racing. They had a coupe, and my grandpa was the body man. He did all the paint work and the body work. He made it so nice that his brother Rich never drove it that hard. They didn't know if racing was their thing because he was too afraid to scratch the car. I got involved in racing in 1992 when my grandparents, Ron and Kay, took me to the stock car races out here at Park Jefferson Speedway.
Take the wheel off.
I was 10 years old. I was never really into any sports or anything like that. And they said, well, we need to get him out and do something. So they picked me up and took me to the races, and I took a liking to it right away. In 2011, I decided it was time to try it myself. It was time to get my own car.
Give the nod to Josh Blom on the outside by a quarter of a car.
And from there, it's blossomed into having my own sport mod operation. The engine is a 350 Chevy. It was used in the stock car back when they were racing. They decided, well, we need to have something a little more impressive than just this little 305. So they pulled this 350 out of the race car. There was a time when they were in the race for a championship with the stock car, and they needed a motor. They blew a motor up, so they pulled the fancy show truck motor out and put it in a stock car and put the racing intake back on it, and away they went. In the mid-60s, they tore the truck apart and restored it again. They painted it black. They shined up a few more things. They had a nice interior put in it. Then in the 70s, they had what they called the best custom in the nation, and he decided, we're going to win that. They tore it completely apart again. They stripped everything down, repainted the entire truck, made a show vehicle out of it. They customized the box. They got a 4-speed Muncie and polished the whole thing. They put Lexan floors and everything in the tunnel, in the box. He wanted to make sure everybody saw the crazy things they did with this truck. They competed from 77 to 78, and the grand prize for winning the best custom in the nation was a 76 AMC Pacer. And on Saturday night, my grandparents were announced as the winners of a 76 AMC Pacer and best custom in the nation. There were a lot of vehicles out on the show circuit that were professionally done. This was done in a garage on 33rd Street in the middle of South Sioux, a single car garage. It was the ultimate poor man's show off, you know? Like, hey, look what we could do with our hands. And so when the mural was painted on the tailgate, the gentleman that painted it said, well, what are we gonna name it? How about Poor Man's Pride? And they said, yeah, that would work.
Josh Blom gonna see.
And so when I started racing, I was kind of in the same boat that my grandparents were. I always remembered Poor Man's Pride, and I thought, it's perfect, it fits me. Because I'm poor and I'm building a race car and I shouldn't be, but by God, I'm proud of it. And so I found a picture of the tailgate of Grandpa's truck that was, you know, roughly about 1 inch by 3 inch, and I scanned it as high resolution as I could, and I duplicated that to put on the back of my race car. He was pretty honored that I had put the thought into creating that decal and using that same idea on this race car, even though my grandma wasn't real keen on me having a race car. They kept the truck through the mid-'80s, and at that time they had also done it all. They'd shown it everywhere they could, and they decided maybe it's time to move on to another project. And a gentleman from Wisconsin saw that this truck was for sale, asked him how much they wanted it, and said sold. They came home, took family pictures with the truck. I was 7 years old, and that's the last I remember of it. My grandpa got sick in the summer of 2019, and unfortunately he passed away in October of that year. 2 weeks later, my grandma told me about a picture on the wall in the garage that had been there for 20 plus years, and it had the name, phone number, and address of the gentleman that had bought the truck. A week later, I went ahead and got the nerve up to call the gentleman that had it. I told him who I was, who my grandpa was. He just thought that was the neatest thing ever. He was in his 80s when I called him, and I told him I would like to try and purchase that truck back to keep in the family. And he said, you know what, I've been talking about selling that truck. He says, I'm gonna write you a letter and I'm gonna tell you everything I know about it and tell you how much we want for the truck. In the meantime, I had told my father-in-law and my mother-in-law about the truck. My father-in-law is a huge Ford lover, and he was interested in it. And he said, you don't worry about how much it costs. You just tell me where that truck is and we're gonna bring that truck home. So a week later, and this letter shows up with everything that he knows about this truck. And at the bottom of this piece of paper is a note that says how much he wants for it. He only wanted what he paid for it back in 1989. We got up way before the crack of dawn and headed to Tomahawk, Wisconsin. And we pull in this gentleman's driveway, and the garage door is wide open, and the front of this truck is sitting in this garage. It was like seeing a ghost. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. If I told you I wasn't crying, I'd be lying. It was a pretty emotional time seeing this truck in person for the first time in 30 years. The gentleman that owned it for 30 years never touched it. He drove it less than 1,000 miles in 30 years. The gentleman and his wife were very, very welcoming, and they waved us on down the road, and we headed back to Minnesota with a 41 Ford. I told my mom and my brother, don't tell a soul. I said, we're gonna make a surprise visit to Thanksgiving, to the family dinner with the truck. For the next 2 weeks, I spent every night and weekend in the garage, polishing, cleaning, restoring as much of the shine as I could to this truck. So we come down the road with this truck on the flatbed, and my mom told everybody to just watch out the window because Josh was bringing an old friend to dinner. We pulled down the road, and my grandma was in tears. She couldn't believe it. That was a great moment for her to see that truck for the first time in 30 years. There's people that are in their 70s that are seeing this truck again for the first time in 30 years and saying, wow, I remember seeing that truck at World of Wheels. I remember seeing this truck here and there. That's one of the great things about it, is seeing people appreciate the work and remembering the man, the family, Ron and Kay, friends and family that put it together. You hear these kind of stories and you just think, wow, that's 1 in a million chance that stuff like that happens. And it makes me think every time I look at it that Grandpa's smiling down on us, that he may have had something to do with it.